She was disowned by her family for marrying a poor man. Now, years later, she's back, not just with a fortune, but with a secret that could destroy everything she's built. What happens when the truth finally comes out? Stay tuned to find out how one woman's past threatens to tear apart her future in ways she never saw coming. Emma had always been the picture of perfection in her family's eyes, educated, well-mannered, and poised for a life of luxury. Born into a wealthy family, her future seemed mapped out from the moment she could walk. Her father, a successful businessman, and her mother, a socialite, had a clear vision of the life they wanted for her. But none of that mattered when Emma made the choice to marry Michael. Michael was kind, hard-working, and full of dreams, but he had nothing in terms of wealth. His background was humble and his future uncertain. Despite their differences, Emma was in love with him, and no amount of her parents' disapproval could change that. They begged her not to marry him, warned her of the consequences, but Emma stood firm. She had always been a woman of conviction, and she believed that love was enough. The day Emma married Michael, her parents disowned her without a second thought. They were furious, feeling betrayed by their only daughter. To them, marrying a man without money was an unforgivable act of rebellion. Her father's angry words still echoed in her mind. "You've chosen a life of struggle over the one we built for you." That day, Emma lost everything she had known, her family, her home, the life of privilege she had been raised in. She moved into a modest apartment with Michael, and they started their life together, scraping by. Emma never regretted her decision, but there were moments when the weight of her family's rejection crushed her spirit. Her relationship with Michael was solid, but it was clear that they were both in for a long and difficult road ahead. Years went by, and Emma and Michael built a life together, though not without challenges. She gave up the dreams her family had for her, but she started to dream her own dreams, dreams of a future they could build together. Emma began working in a small marketing firm, slowly climbing the corporate ladder, while Michael followed his passion for music, teaching at a local school and performing at night. The struggle, while difficult, was also strangely fulfilling. They had little, but they had each other, and that was enough. However, life had a way of throwing curveballs, and Emma's world was about to change in a way she never saw coming. One day, while working late at her office, Emma received a call that would alter the course of her life. A company she had worked with on a small project wanted her to take over a major account. The opportunity was a game changer, and it seemed too good to be true. Michael was cautious, urging Emma to take her time and think about it. But Emma, ever the optimist, saw it as a chance to secure a better future for them both. The work was intense, but Emma thrived under pressure. Soon her efforts paid off. Within months, she had not only secured the account, but had become the company's rising star. Her reputation grew, and with it, the money started to pour in. Michael supported her every step of the way, but as Emma's career soared, their personal lives began to shift. Emma found herself constantly torn between her demanding job and the man she loved. Michael, once her biggest supporter, started to feel like he was losing her. As Emma's career grew, so did her financial independence. She was making more money than she had ever imagined, and the lifestyle she once dreamed of was now within her reach. But with success came temptation. Emma was introduced to powerful individuals who could further her career, and she began to move in circles she had never imagined. There were parties, meetings, and networking events where she met people who were willing to do whatever it took to climb the social ladder. While Emma wasn't swayed by the glitz and glamour, she soon realized that there were things she had to do to keep up with the demands of her new life. A few years into her success, Emma received a call from her family, a call she never expected. Her mother, sounding fragile and regretful, told her that her father was ill. He had suffered a heart attack, and the doctors weren't sure how much longer he would last. Emma, despite everything, felt a pang of guilt. She hadn't spoken to her parents in years, and now they were reaching out to her. Michael, who had always encouraged her to make peace with her past, was there for her. He knew how much this moment meant to Emma. Together, they made the decision to go to her family's estate, though Emma was nervous about how they would receive her after all these years. When Emma arrived at her parents' home, the tension in the air was thick. Her mother greeted her with tears, and her father, though weak, managed a smile. The old house, once a symbol of comfort and wealth, now felt cold and distant. Her parents had aged, and the life they had built seemed to have crumbled without her. But despite the strained reunion, Emma couldn't ignore the emotions swirling inside her. Her parents had once been everything to her, and seeing them now, so vulnerable, stirred something deep inside. Still, there was no easy way to bridge the gap of the years that had passed. As the days went on, Emma's father, though frail, began to open up. He apologized for the way he had treated her, and he admitted that he had made a mistake in pushing her away. Emma, who had long ago built walls around her heart, was surprised to find herself forgiving him, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she had moved on. The confrontation was raw, but necessary. Michael stood by her side, a silent strength in the background. Emma realized that while her family had once disowned her, she no longer needed their approval to feel validated. Yet Emma's return came with a secret she had kept for years. She had not only succeeded in her career, but she had also built a fortune that no one knew about. The money she had earned wasn't from her marketing work alone. She had made a series of investments, some risky, others calculated. But it wasn't just her business acumen that had led to her wealth. It was a secret deal she had made with an old business partner, one that no one could ever know about. She knew the risks of keeping such a secret, but she had decided long ago that this was her life, her choices. And now, with her family slowly accepting her back, Emma couldn't bear the thought of telling them the truth. Her return was marked by an uneasy silence as she navigated the waters of reconciliation with her family. Her mother was overjoyed, but her father, though accepting, remained distant. He wasn't sure if he could ever truly forgive himself for the way he had treated her. And Emma was struggling with whether or not she should reveal the truth. She had worked hard for everything she had, and she didn't want anyone to see her as a gold digger or a liar. The tension between who she had been and who she had become weighed heavily on her. One evening, while at dinner with her parents, Emma's father asked her how she had made her money. It was a question that had been hanging in the air for days, and Emma had been dreading it. She paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. The air in the room felt charged as she considered her answer. Her mind raced through all the options, but there was only one answer she could give, one that would keep her secret safe. "I invested," she said quietly, not looking at her father, "in the right places at the right time." It was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. She hoped it would be enough, but deep down, Emma knew that it would never truly be enough. As the weeks passed, Emma's relationship with her parents continued to improve, but the secret lingered. She had come so far, but there was always a part of her that was afraid to let them in completely. They knew her success, but they didn't know the whole story. And Emma wondered, did they need to know? Would revealing her secret destroy everything she had rebuilt? One day, while walking through her family's garden, Emma made a decision. She wasn't ready to tell them the full truth, not yet, maybe not ever. She had fought too hard for the life she now had, and some things were better left unsaid. But that didn't mean she couldn't find peace. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up, and she was finally beginning to feel like the woman she had always wanted to be. The family was slowly coming together again, but Emma knew that the road ahead would never be easy. She had created a new life, one that didn't depend on her parents' approval. But there was still a part of her, deep inside, that wanted to be loved and accepted by them. The truth was, Emma didn't need their validation anymore. She had found her strength, her independence, and a sense of peace that came from knowing that she had made the right choice, no matter the cost. The days that followed Emma's return were a blur of emotions. Her family, though initially hesitant, was slowly warming to the idea of having her back. Her mother was the first to truly express how much she had missed her, offering apologies that, while heartfelt, still couldn't erase the years of hurt. Emma saw the change in her parents, but there was always something unspoken, lingering in the air, an invisible wall between them that no amount of small talk could break down. She found herself drawn to the life she had left behind, the family dinners, the lavish holidays, the security that had once been a comforting blanket. Yet, despite the wealth and comfort her family had offered, Emma realized she didn't need any of it anymore. Her success, though initially born from a desire to prove herself, had evolved into something much more personal. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about independence, about making her own choices without anyone's approval or permission. And that realization came with a heavy weight. The pressure to reveal her full story continued to build. Emma could feel it every time her father looked at her with those inquisitive eyes, wondering what she had been doing all these years. And her mother, though understanding, couldn't help but wonder what exactly Emma had achieved to get where she was. They both knew she had been successful in her career, but neither of them had any idea of the fortune she had quietly built. They didn't know about the risky deals, the hidden partnerships, or the investments that had turned her into a woman with power and influence. Yet there was also the sense that her parents were waiting for her to fill in the blanks of the story they had built around her absence. They had imagined her struggling, barely scraping by with Michael, or worse, living a life of quiet regret. Instead, they were confronted with a woman who had not only survived their rejection, but had flourished in ways they could never have expected. The truth, as it always does, seemed just out of reach, and Emma couldn't help but wonder, if they knew everything, would they still see her as their daughter, or would they only see her as a successful woman who had outgrown them? Meanwhile, Michael was still the same, supportive, loving, and happy to stay out of the spotlight. He had always been the quieter one in their relationship, preferring the simplicity of their life before the fortune and fame. But as Emma's world became more complicated, Michael started to feel the strain. He had never asked for wealth, and he certainly hadn't expected to be swept into this new, glitzy life that Emma's success had created. There were moments when he felt out of place, as though Emma was slowly slipping away from him, consumed by her career and the new people she was meeting. The old Emma, the one who had been content with small joys and humble dreams, seemed to be getting lost in the whirlwind of business meetings and luxurious events. And while he loved her, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer the same couple they had once been. It wasn't just the lifestyle change that was affecting their relationship. It was the fact that Emma was carrying a secret that she couldn't share. Michael, who had stood by her through thick and thin, had no idea that his wife was now a woman with a fortune that far exceeded his wildest dreams. He never once questioned Emma's success. He was proud of her, but he knew there was something she wasn't telling him. The strain of that secrecy was beginning to show, even if Emma didn't want to admit it. But Emma couldn't bring herself to open up to Michael about the full extent of her wealth. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and revealing the truth felt like exposing a vulnerability she wasn't ready to face. She wondered if Michael would ever understand why she had made the secret deals, why she had kept so much from him. She knew it wasn't fair to him, but in her mind, it was a risk she had to take alone. One evening, after a quiet dinner with her parents, Emma sat on the balcony overlooking the sprawling estate. The sun had just set, casting a soft glow over the garden. Her mother had insisted on giving her the grand tour of the estate, as if everything had remained the same despite the years. Emma found herself smiling at the memories, the laughter around the dinner table, the holidays spent in opulence, the feeling of safety in the walls of her childhood home. But it was a hollow smile. She realized now that none of that mattered. What she had gained on her own was far more valuable. As she gazed out into the night, her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was Michael. His voice, though calm, carried an underlying tension. "Emma," he began, "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we come clean about everything. I think it's time for you to tell your parents the whole truth." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known this moment was coming, but she had hoped it wouldn't arrive so soon. She sat up straighter, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. "Michael," she said slowly, "you know why I haven't said anything. It's complicated." He didn't respond right away. There was silence, followed by a sigh. "I understand, Emma. But you can't keep running from the truth forever. You've built something incredible, but it's hard to share your success when you're holding so much back." Emma stared out at the darkening sky, the weight of his words settling over her. She had always prided herself on being strong and independent, but now, with everything she had built, it seemed like the walls she had so carefully constructed were beginning to crack. She had always been in control, but in this moment she realized that sometimes control was an illusion. The decision had never been easy, but the truth was becoming inevitable. Emma had worked too hard to hide her success, but now, with her family slowly accepting her back, it was time for her to confront the past and her own fear of rejection. But would the truth bring her peace, or would it destroy the fragile bond she was beginning to rebuild with her parents? The following days were filled with tension as Emma weighed her options. Every conversation with her parents felt like a step closer to the inevitable reveal. Her father's frail health seemed to hang over every interaction, his quiet guilt about the past weighing heavily in the room. Emma could see how much he regretted the way he had treated her, and yet part of her still wasn't sure if he truly understood why she had made the choices she had. They had all become strangers to each other in a way. Emma, the daughter who had once fit perfectly into their world, now stood apart. A successful woman who had built her own life without their help. Michael's words lingered in Emma's mind like a quiet echo. "It's time to come clean." She knew it was the right thing to do, but part of her was terrified. What would happen if she told them everything? Would they truly accept her, or would it only serve to drive another wedge between them? For so long she had lived in the shadows of their disapproval, and even though she had proven herself in her own way, a part of her still yearned for their validation. Emma decided that it was time. She could no longer carry the burden of secrecy. The truth, no matter how painful, was something she needed to share, not just for herself, but for the sake of the future she wanted with her family. She took a deep breath and called her parents, asking them to meet her at a small cafe they used to visit when she was younger. It was a place filled with memories, and Emma hoped it would be a neutral ground for the difficult conversation ahead. When they arrived, Emma could see the nervousness in their eyes. Her father, still pale from his recent health scare, looked at her with a mix of hope and fear. Her mother, ever the elegant figure, had softened over the years, but still held on to that sense of control that had once dominated their family. They sat down at the table, and for a moment there was only silence. Emma could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her, and she took another steadying breath. "I've come to tell you the truth," she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion, "about how I've been living these past few years." She paused, glancing down at her hands. "I know I've been distant, and I know it's been hard for you to understand, but the truth is, I didn't just survive after I left. I built a life that's not just about surviving, but thriving." Her parents exchanged a look, and Emma could see the questions bubbling beneath the surface. Her father leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Emma, We've always known you were capable, but we didn't expect this." Emma's heart raced as she prepared to share the full story. "I didn't just work my way up in the marketing world. I made investments, took risks. I've built a fortune of my own, something you could never have imagined. I've done it all without anyone's help. It wasn't just business decisions. It was about choosing what was best for me, even if it meant leaving everything behind." Her mother's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "But how?" "Why did you keep this from us, Emma? We had no idea." Emma felt the sting of the question, but she pressed on. "I kept it from you because I didn't want to disappoint you even more. I didn't want to feel like I was still seeking your approval, especially after everything that happened. I didn't want my success to be seen as me trying to prove something to you." Her father spoke, his voice softer than Emma expected. "We never wanted you to feel like that, Emma. We were wrong. We should have supported you, and we're sorry for not being there when you needed us most." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Emma looked at her father, seeing the raw honesty in his eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. This was the moment she had been waiting for, when the walls between them finally started to crumble. But the conversation wasn't over. There was still the matter of the secret, something Emma had kept hidden for even longer than her family had known about her wealth. It was a secret that could change everything, and as she sat across from her parents, she knew it was time to confront it. "There's more," she said quietly. Her parents looked at her, eyes wide. "I didn't just make my money through investments and business. I made a deal with a partner who wanted something more than just business success. He offered me a deal, one that wasn't entirely legal, but one that changed everything for me. And I've been keeping it a secret all this time." Her mother gasped softly, her hand coming to her chest. "Emma, what are you saying?" "I didn't take the deal because I wanted more money," Emma continued, her voice trembling now. "I took it because I knew I couldn't go back to living the life I had before. I couldn't go back to being that girl who was disowned for choosing love over wealth. It was my only chance to prove that I could do this on my own terms. But now, with everything I've built, I'm not sure I can ever make peace with it." Her father, once a pillar of authority, looked shaken. "You've been hiding this from us for years?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, her eyes never leaving theirs. "I have, and I'm sorry. But I thought that if I could prove myself to you, if I could make something of myself without needing you, maybe you would finally see that I didn't need to be perfect, that I didn't need to live up to the ideal you had for me." There was a long silence, filled only with the weight of Emma's words. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand, her grip surprisingly gentle. "You were always perfect to us, Emma. We just couldn't see it. We thought you were making a mistake. We didn't realize that you were trying to make your own way, and for that we're truly sorry." Emma felt a wave of emotion rise up in her chest, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel vulnerable. "It's okay," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't expect things to be perfect, but I needed you to know the truth." The conversation that followed was long and filled with tears, but it was also one of healing. Emma's parents weren't angry. They weren't disappointed. They were simply trying to understand, trying to come to terms with the woman their daughter had become. And for the first time, Emma felt like she was no longer carrying the weight of their rejection. She had revealed her secret, her truth, and it had set her free. When the meeting ended, Emma didn't know what the future held. There were still so many unknowns: her relationship with Michael, her future with her family, and whether her success could ever truly make up for the years of silence. But in that moment, she knew one thing: she had made peace with herself. She had faced her fears and her past, and no matter what came next, she was finally ready to move forward. Emma left the cafe with a sense of cautious optimism. The conversation with her parents had gone better than she had expected, but the weight of her secret still lingered in the back of her mind. She had opened up about everything, about her success, her struggles, and the deal she had made, but there was still something gnawing at her. What would the rest of her family think? What would Michael think when he found out? It wasn't that Emma hadn't considered telling him, she just didn't know how. She had kept the truth from him for so long, and now it felt like a mountain too high to climb. The secret had started as a small thing, a way for her to secure her future after she had been disowned. But now it was so much bigger. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust. She couldn't bear the thought of Michael feeling betrayed by her. But there was something else she had to face, something she had pushed to the back of her mind for so long, the possibility that her past choices might come back to haunt her. The deal she had made years ago had been risky, and although it had worked out, she couldn't shake the fear that it would all unravel one day. She wasn't naive enough to think there were no strings attached. There was a part of her that was always looking over her shoulder, waiting for someone to come forward with a demand, a consequence she couldn't avoid. As Emma walked home, she couldn't help but replay the conversation in her head. Her parents' acceptance had been a relief, but it had also opened a floodgate of emotions she hadn't expected. Her father's apology, his regret for how he had treated her, had cracked open a door she had closed years ago. There was still a part of her that longed for their approval, but now she knew it wasn't about them anymore. She had built her life on her own terms. She had proven herself, not to them, but to herself. When she got home, Michael was already there. He was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine absent-mindedly. But when Emma entered, he looked up at her with a smile. She could see the warmth in his eyes, the love he had never stopped giving her, even when the world around them seemed to be falling apart. He had always been her rock, her constant in a life full of chaos. And yet, Emma felt the growing divide between them. "How did it go?" Michael asked, setting the magazine down and meeting her eyes with a look of concern. "You look different." Emma smiled faintly and sat beside him. "It went better than I expected. They're trying to understand. But there's still a lot of things we need to talk about." Michael nodded, his expression serious. "I'm glad it went well, but I can see something's bothering you." "What's going on, Emma?" She hesitated for a moment, unsure of where to start. Michael had been the one to encourage her to open up to her parents, and now she felt like she was being torn between two worlds. The past she had tried so hard to bury, and the future she was building with him. I've been keeping so much from you, Michael," Emma finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's so much I haven't told you, and I don't know how to make it right." Michael reached out, taking her hand in his. "You know you can tell me anything, right? I'm not going anywhere." Emma looked into his eyes, searching for the strength to reveal everything. "I've built something more than just a career. I've made a fortune, Michael. A big one. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid of what you'd think, afraid that you'd see me as someone different, someone you didn't know." Michael was silent for a moment, processing her words. Emma could see the shock in his eyes, but there was no anger, no resentment. "I don't know what to say," he said slowly. "I'm proud of you, Emma, but why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me with this?" Tears pricked at the corners of Emma's eyes as she fought to keep them in check. "I thought you'd leave me. I thought I would lose everything all over again. I was afraid of what it would mean for us." Michael pulled her into an embrace, holding her close. "Emma, you're my wife. You've always been my wife. Nothing changes that. But you should have trusted me. We're in this together, no matter what." His words should have brought relief, but Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. "There's more," she whispered. Michael pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "I didn't just make the money the usual way. I made a deal, a risky one. It was the only way I could secure everything we have now. I know it's not something I should have done, but I was desperate, Michael. And now I'm scared that it'll all come crashing down one day." Michael's face softened as he listened, and for a moment, Emma wondered if she had made a mistake in revealing everything. But then he spoke, his voice steady and calm. "You've done what you thought was best. You've been trying to protect us, Emma. I get that. But we need to face whatever comes together. I'm not going to run from this, and neither should you." Emma felt a rush of relief wash over her as she looked at him. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone in this. They were in this together. But there was still the matter of her secret. The deal she had made, the risk she had taken, and the consequences that might follow. She knew she couldn't hide it forever. "I'm so scared," Emma confessed, her voice trembling. "Scared that everything will fall apart." Michael cupped her face gently, wiping away a tear. "We'll face it together, Emma. You don't have to be scared anymore. We'll figure it out." For the first time in years, Emma believed him. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held. But she knew that whatever came next, she wouldn't be facing it alone. They would face it together, just like they always had. The days that followed Emma's confession felt like a whirlwind. She had finally shared the truth with Michael, and while it wasn't easy, there was a sense of relief she hadn't expected. The burden of secrecy that had weighed so heavily on her shoulders for years seemed lighter now, even though the uncertainty of what would come next still loomed over them. Michael, ever the steady presence in her life, had taken the news with more grace than Emma could have hoped for. It wasn't that he wasn't concerned. He had questions, and plenty of them, but he had stood by her through it all. As they navigated this new chapter, Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for him. He wasn't just her husband. He was her partner, her equal in every way, and together they would face whatever challenges came their way. But even as Emma began to feel more at peace with herself, the shadow of her secret still loomed. She had told Michael everything, but there was still the matter of the business deal that had made her fortune. It wasn't just a matter of money, it was a risky decision that had put her in a morally gray area. If anyone else found out, especially the people in her business world, it could all unravel in an instant. One evening, after dinner, Emma sat alone in the living room, deep in thought. Michael had gone to bed early, tired from the long week. She had been going through the numbers, reviewing her business ventures, and double-checking every decision she had made. The secret deal had been an integral part of her success, but it wasn't one she could ever fully share with anyone. As much as she had made peace with her choices, the reality of the risk she had taken was never far from her mind. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. Emma hesitated for a moment before opening it, her heart skipping a beat. The message was short and cryptic. "I know what you've been hiding. I suggest we talk before this gets out of hand." Emma's stomach dropped. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together who could have sent the message. Could it be someone from her past, someone involved in the deal? Or was it someone looking to exploit her success for their own gain? She stared at the screen, feeling a cold sweat forming on the back of her neck. The very thing she had been dreading for years was now coming to the surface. She tried to shake off the anxiety that gripped her. Whoever this was, they didn't know everything. She had made sure of that. Still, the message unsettled her, and she couldn't ignore the possibility that this was the beginning of something much bigger than she had ever anticipated. The next morning, Emma didn't mention the message to Michael. She didn't want to add to his concerns until she knew more. Instead, she focused on her usual routine, but the nagging feeling of uncertainty lingered. She spent the entire day trying to push the fear out of her mind, but it was difficult to focus on anything else. Her work, her family, even her relationship with Michael. All of it felt like it was teetering on the edge of something she couldn't control. By the time evening came, Emma had made up her mind. She couldn't wait for the threat to materialize. She needed to take action. She responded to the message, her fingers shaking slightly as she typed, "Who is this? What do you want from me?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Minutes later, the reply came, "Meet me tonight, 9 p.m. at the old pier. I'll explain everything." Emma felt a chill crawl up her spine. She had no idea who this person was, but something about the tone of the message made her uneasy. Her mind raced as she considered her options. She could ignore it, pretend it didn't matter. But deep down, she knew that wasn't an option. If someone knew about the secret deal, they could destroy everything she had worked for. Michael had no idea about the risks Emma had taken to secure their future. She had kept him in the dark to protect him, but now, faced with an unknown threat, she realized that the lies she had built around herself were starting to unravel. There was no more hiding. She had to face whatever was coming head-on, no matter how dangerous it might be. At 8:45 p.m., Emma left the house. She didn't tell Michael where she was going. She didn't know how to explain it without revealing everything, without revealing the secret she had kept from him for so long. The pier, where she had agreed to meet this mysterious person, was a place she hadn't visited in years. It was old, abandoned, and silent, a far cry from the bustling, wealthy world she had become a part of. As Emma drove through the streets, the memories of her past life seemed to press down on her, reminding her of the choices that had led her to this point. When she arrived, the pier was empty, the silence stretching out before her like an ocean of uncertainty. Emma stepped out of the car, her heels clicking sharply on the wooden planks. The sky above her was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of a distant street lamp. She had no idea who she was meeting or what they wanted, but she knew she had to face whatever came next. As she walked toward the end of the pier, her heart raced. The air was cold, and the sound of the water lapping against the posts beneath her feet only made the silence feel more oppressive. And then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat as she recognized the face. It was someone from her past, a man she had long since tried to forget. "Emma," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "I think it's time we finally had a conversation." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the man who had stepped into the dim light. His face was older now, but the cold, calculating look in his eyes was unmistakable. It was Gregory, the business partner she had made the secret deal with all those years ago. The same man who had offered her the opportunity to secure her fortune, the man who had helped her when she was desperate, and the man who had made her question her morals. "Gregory," Emma said, her voice steady but her mind racing. "What are you doing here?" He gave a small, almost mocking smile. "I think you know why I'm here. We have some unfinished business, don't we?" Emma felt a wave of panic wash over her, but she quickly pushed it aside. She wasn't about to let him see her fear. She had faced far worse in her life, and she wasn't about to back down now. "I don't know what you think you know, but I've made it clear to you before that our deal is over." Gregory stepped closer, his presence imposing, but Emma stood her ground. "Oh, it's far from over, Emma. You see, I've been watching you, and I know what you've built. You've become quite the success story, haven't you?" He let the words hang in the air, his tone dripping with something dark, perhaps envy, perhaps something more sinister. Emma's stomach twisted. This was exactly what she had feared. The truth, the secret she had kept buried, was coming back to haunt her in the worst possible way. "What do you want from me, Gregory?" He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his eyes narrowing. "It's simple. You owe me. You always have. And now, I'm ready to collect." A cold shiver ran down Emma's spine. She had known this day might come, but hearing the words from Gregory himself made the reality hit harder than she could have imagined. She had thought that by cutting ties with him, by moving forward, she could leave her past behind. But the past was never really gone, was it? It always had a way of catching up with you. "You think I owe you something?" Emma's voice was sharper now, the anger rising within her. You offered me that deal because you knew I needed it. You helped me secure my future, and I paid you back. I've kept my end of the bargain." Gregory chuckled, the sound dark and low. "Oh, Emma, you've always been good at convincing yourself that you're in control, but you're not. You've built your life on a shaky foundation, and it's only a matter of time before it all falls apart." Emma felt a surge of frustration. She wasn't the same young woman who had made that deal years ago. She had changed. She had worked for everything she had, and she wasn't going to let Gregory ruin it all now. "You don't get to control me anymore," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "If you think you can come here and threaten me, you're wrong. I'm not the same person you knew." Gregory's eyes glinted with a mix of amusement and malice. "Oh, I know you've changed, Emma. That's what makes this so interesting. You see, I've been patient. I've been waiting for the right time to come back into your life, and now the time has come." Emma felt her heart pound in her chest as he continued. "I know all about your little investments, Emma, how you've been quietly building your empire using the money you got from that deal. You may think you're untouchable now, but you're not. I can bring it all crashing down. All I have to do is tell the right people." A cold sweat broke out across Emma's forehead. The weight of his words settled in, and for the first time in years, she felt the familiar fear creep up inside her. She had always known that this could happen. She had made that choice, taken that risk, and now it was all coming back to her. But she wouldn't, let Gregory have the power over her again. Not now, not after everything she had built. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Emma said, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to bubble to the surface. "If you think you can control me with threats, you're wrong. I've worked too hard to let you ruin everything. I'm not that desperate woman anymore." Gregory's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "You really think you can just walk away from this, don't you? You think that because you've made a name for yourself, because you've managed to build something, that you're safe. But you're not. There's always a price to pay, Emma, and you're going to pay it now." For a moment, Emma wasn't sure what to do. She had never expected Gregory to come after her like this. She had always believed that once she cut ties, once she made her success on her own, that it would be enough. But now, standing before him, she realized that some parts of her past could never truly be left behind. But Emma wasn't about to give up, not after everything she had sacrificed, not after all the pain she had endured. She had fought for her independence, and she wasn't going to let Gregory's threats take that away from her. "You don't get to control my life anymore, Gregory," she said, her voice low but firm. "If you want to ruin me, go ahead, but I'm not backing down. I'm not afraid of you." Gregory's eyes darkened. For a moment, it seemed like he was considering her words, but then his expression hardened, and he took a step back. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" He laughed bitterly, the sound echoing across the empty pier. "This isn't over, Emma, not by a long shot." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows from which he had come. Emma stood there for a long moment, her mind spinning. She didn't know what Gregory's next move would be, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let him win. She had already come too far to let her past destroy her now. As the silence of the pier settled around her, Emma realized that this was only the beginning of a new battle. And for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Whatever the future held, she would face it head on, no matter the cost. The night felt longer than usual as Emma drove back home, her mind racing with everything that had just transpired. Gregory's words echoed in her head like a constant hum she couldn't escape. She tried to push the fear down, but it lingered in the back of her mind. This isn't over. She could feel the weight of his threat pressing on her, a reality she had hoped to avoid. Gregory had always been dangerous, a man who knew how to manipulate people, how to use their weaknesses against them. He had always had a way of getting what he wanted, and now she was his target again. Emma knew he wouldn't just go away. If he had the power to ruin her, he would. But what he didn't realize was that she wasn't the same person he had left behind years ago. She had built her success on her own, and now she was ready to fight for it. As she pulled into the driveway, Emma felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. She had spent years running from her past, but now it seemed like her past had caught up with her. She walked into the house where Michael was waiting, his usual warmth and concern radiating as he looked up from the couch. "You okay?" he asked softly, standing up. Emma paused for a moment, taking in the sight of him. She had kept so much from him, and now she felt a sense of guilt weighing on her. She couldn't protect him from the truth forever. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, her voice laced with a seriousness that made him pause in his steps. Michael nodded, his expression immediately shifting to one of concern. "What happened? Is everything okay?" Taking a deep breath, Emma sat down beside him, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I met Gregory tonight. He knows everything, about the deal, the money, everything I've built. He's threatening to ruin me if I don't meet his demands." Michael's eyes widened in shock. He had always known there was more to Emma's story, but he hadn't expected this. What kind of demands? Emma hesitated for a moment, struggling to find the right words. "He wants something from me. I don't know what exactly, but he said if I don't give it to him, he'll expose everything. He's the one who helped me with that deal years ago, and he's not going to let me walk away from it. He's going to use it to destroy everything I've worked for." Michael sat down next to her, taking her hand in his. "Emma, we're not going to let him do that. You don't have to face this alone. We'll figure this out together." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Michael had always been her rock, and now, more than ever, she needed his support. But there was something inside her that felt like she was walking a fine line between fighting for her future and losing everything in the process. The decision she had made years ago, the one that had set her on this path, was now threatening to unravel her entire life. She had taken the risk then, and now she was paying the price. "I don't know what to do," Emma admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I've worked so hard to build this life, but I don't know if I can keep running from him. I don't know if I can protect us from this anymore." Michael pulled her close, holding her tightly. "You've already proven that you're stronger than anything life throws at you. You've built this empire from nothing, and you're not going to let him tear it down. We'll find a way out of this, Emma. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Emma took a deep breath, his words grounding her. She wasn't alone. She had Michael. She had the strength she'd built over the years, and she wasn't about to let someone like Gregory control her again. The past might have come back to haunt her, but Emma knew she wasn't the same person who had made that deal. She was stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever to protect what she had built. As the night wore on, Emma's mind began to race with ideas, with plans. She couldn't let Gregory win, not after everything she had sacrificed. She had to be strategic. She had to be smart. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her future, her family, and everything she had fought for. The next day, Emma began putting her plan into motion. She reached out to her lawyer, arranging a meeting to discuss her options. She knew that Gregory wouldn't back down easily, but she also knew that he couldn't keep threatening her forever. There had to be a way to protect herself, to make sure that the life she had fought so hard for wasn't destroyed. But as she sat in her lawyer's office, going over her legal options, a thought crossed her mind. What if Gregory was right? What if there was a price to pay that she couldn't escape? What if the choices she had made, the risks she had taken, were going to cost her everything? She pushed the thought aside. Now was not the time to doubt herself. She had faced challenges before, and she had overcome them. She wasn't going to let Gregory take everything from her. Not again. As she left the lawyer's office, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She didn't know how this battle would end, but she was ready to fight for everything she had worked for. She had come too far to let it slip away. The following days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and strategies as Emma prepared for the fight that was now inevitable. Gregory's threat loomed over her like a storm cloud, and she knew she had to move quickly. The more time she spent thinking about her options, the more she realized that she couldn't just rely on her usual methods to solve this. She had to take a different approach, one that would protect her, her future, and the life she had built. Emma had always been a person who relied on her intelligence and business acumen to navigate challenges. But this was different. Gregory wasn't just a business partner who had helped her get ahead. He was a person who knew her weaknesses, who understood her desperation years ago, and who had no qualms about using that knowledge to manipulate her. He was dangerous, and Emma knew she couldn't face him alone. She called Michael, her voice urgent as she spoke. "I need you to meet me now. It's about Gregory. We need to discuss a plan." Within the hour, Michael was sitting across from her in their living room, his brow furrowed in concern. "What's going on? What did he want?" Emma took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "He's not going to back down. He wants something from me, but I don't know what it is yet. And he's threatening to expose everything, about the deal, about the money I made." Michael leaned forward, his expression intense. "We need to prepare for that. Whatever it is, we can handle it. What's your plan?" Emma paused, running a hand through her hair. "I've been talking to my lawyer, and we're considering options. We need to find a way to control the narrative before Gregory can twist it into something that works in his favor. I can't let him have the upper hand." Michael nodded. "I'm with you, but we need to be careful. Gregory knows how to manipulate people. He's not going to just disappear. We need to outsmart him." Emma agreed. "Exactly. I've already started pulling together information. I've got copies of the contracts, the deals, and all the documentation. If he tries to turn this into a public spectacle, I'm going to be ready." The plan they discussed wasn't easy, but Emma was determined. She would gather everything she could find, to ensure that if Gregory made his move, he would be met with a wall of evidence that exposed his own wrongdoings. She would take control of the situation and make sure he couldn't use her past against her. As the next few days passed, Emma's mind was consumed with the plan. She worked late into the night, making sure every document was in order, every detail accounted for. The pressure was mounting, but she was focused. Gregory's threats didn't scare her anymore. What scared her now was the possibility of losing everything she had built, the life she had worked so hard to create. She couldn't let that happen. But even as she prepared to fight, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something bigger was at play. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even just about power. Gregory had always been about control, about bending people to his will. And Emma realized now that this was his way of asserting dominance over her once again. He had seen her rise, and now he wanted to tear her down. In the midst of the chaos, Emma found herself thinking about the years before, when she had first met Gregory, when she had been desperate, vulnerable, and willing to take risks. She had been so focused on survival, on proving to herself and everyone around her that she could make it on her own, that she hadn't fully understood the consequences of her decisions. But now, with everything on the line, Emma understood the cost of her ambition. One afternoon, while going over the legal documents again, Emma received another message from Gregory. This time, it was even more cryptic than the last. "I think you're underestimating how much I know. Be careful. The clock is ticking." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. What did he mean by that? What else did he know? Her stomach churned as she read the message over and over. Gregory's hold on her life wasn't just about money, it was about control, and he was letting her know that he had the upper hand. He was playing a dangerous game, and Emma couldn't afford to lose. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call. Emma didn't even look at the number. She answered immediately, her voice sharp with determination. "What do you want, Gregory?" He chuckled on the other end of the line, his voice as smooth and unsettling as ever. "I want what's mine, Emma. You know what I'm talking about." Emma clenched her jaw, refusing to show any weakness. "You don't have anything on me anymore, Gregory. You think you can manipulate me like you used to, but you're wrong. I'm not that woman anymore." He was silent for a moment, as if considering her words. Then he spoke again, his voice colder now. "We'll see about that, won't we?" The line went dead, and Emma stood there, her heart pounding. It was clear now that Gregory wasn't just threatening her career. He was trying to break her mentally, to make her question everything she had fought for. But Emma wasn't going to fall for it. She was stronger than that. She turned to Michael, who had been watching her intently, sensing the shift in her mood. "He's pushing me, Michael. He's not going to stop until he gets what he wants." Michael walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Then we'll stop him. We'll fight back. But we do this on our terms, Emma, not his." Emma nodded, feeling the strength of his support. He was right. She wasn't going to let Gregory dictate her life anymore. She had control over her own future, and no one, especially Gregory, was going to take that from her. It was time to stop running. It was time to stand up and face whatever was coming next. She had come this far, and she wouldn't let anyone take it away from her now. Emma spent the next few days preparing for the battle ahead, organizing everything she had learned about Gregory and his dealings. Every phone call, every piece of correspondence, and every document she could gather was placed into a file that was now growing thicker by the hour. She knew that Gregory wouldn't back down easily, but Emma was ready. She had been cornered before, but this time she wasn't going to let him control the narrative. She and Michael had formulated a plan. They weren't just going to wait around for Gregory to make his move. They would make theirs first. They had to be proactive. They began reaching out to people from Emma's past, those who might have information on Gregory's dealings, and anyone who could help them turn the tables. Emma had been careful to keep a tight circle of trusted contacts over the years, and now those contacts were more valuable than ever. While Emma dove deep into this new strategy, there was an undeniable pressure that came with every decision she made. The hours were long, and the tension between her and Michael, though unspoken, grew as they tried to balance their professional and personal lives. Emma knew Michael was worried, but he remained her biggest ally, his unwavering support giving her the strength she needed to face what was coming. One evening, after another long day of research and planning, Emma and Michael sat down to discuss their next steps. The reality of what they were facing hit them both harder than either had anticipated. Gregory was dangerous, but it wasn't just his threats that Emma feared. It was the possibility that no matter what they did, Gregory could still find a way to destroy everything. "We need to be ready for anything," Michael said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "We don't know what he's capable of. He's done this before. We need to have a backup plan." Emma nodded, her mind whirling. "I agree. We'll prepare for the worst. If he exposes me or uses my past against me, we need to make sure the truth is on our side. We need to stay ahead of him." They spent the next few days crafting statements and gathering the necessary documents to protect themselves. Emma knew that if Gregory wanted to go public with the details of their past deal, she had to be the one to control the story. They would release their own narrative, one that framed the entire situation in a way that left no room for manipulation. As they worked, Emma found herself haunted by Gregory's last words, the ones that made her feel as though she was running out of time. She couldn't shake the feeling that Gregory wasn't done with her, that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. His power over her life had never truly gone away, and now it felt like he was tightening his grip. The pressure was building to a breaking point. Emma began to notice the toll it was taking on her health. She had always been a workaholic, but now the exhaustion was starting to show in ways it never had before. She couldn't afford to let up, not with everything on the line. But the weight of it all, the looming threat from Gregory, the constant tension in her home, the emotional strain, was becoming almost unbearable. One morning, after a restless night of sleep, Emma woke up to find Michael sitting at the kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee in his hands. His face was lined with concern, and the fatigue in his eyes was impossible to ignore. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You can't keep doing this. You're wearing yourself thin. I've seen it." Emma glanced down at her hands, the tremor in her fingers betraying the stress she was under. She wanted to push him away, tell him that she had it under control, but she couldn't. He was right. She wasn't okay. "I can't stop now, Michael. If I do, everything we've built will fall apart." "I'm not saying we stop, but you need to take care of yourself," Michael insisted. "You've been going non-stop. You're not going to be able to fight him if you're running on empty." Emma let out a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always believed that she had to do everything herself, that relying on anyone, even Michael, would be a sign of weakness. But now, sitting across from him, she realized how wrong she had been. She had always had Michael by her side, and he wasn't going anywhere. She had to trust him, just as she had trusted herself to build the life they had. "I know you're right," Emma said finally, her voice softer than it had been in days. "I've just been so focused on keeping everything together that I forgot to take care of myself." Michael reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "We'll get through this, Emma. You don't have to do it alone." The warmth of his hand in hers grounded her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to relax, even if just for a moment. She knew the battle wasn't over, that they still had a long way to go. But with Michael by her side, she felt a renewed sense of strength. She didn't have to face this alone. As the days continued to pass, Emma and Michael's plan was set into motion. They had gathered enough information, made enough preparations, and now all they had to do was wait. But the waiting was the hardest part. Every phone call, every text, every knock at the door felt like it could be Gregory's next move. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, control, and the choices they had made that were now threatening to destroy their future. One afternoon, Emma received a call that would change everything. It wasn't from Gregory, but from one of her trusted contacts. She had reached out to them earlier in the week, hoping for any piece of information that might help her gain leverage over Gregory. The call came just as she was sitting down to lunch with Michael. "Emma," the voice on the other end said, "I've got something you need to see. It's about Gregory. You need to act fast." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I can't say over the phone," the voice replied, "but it's important. Meet me at the office, and I'll show you everything." Emma looked at Michael, who raised an eyebrow at her expression. She quickly explained what was happening, and Michael agreed to go with her. They didn't know what this new development could mean, but they knew it was their next step. Gregory had been one step ahead for too long, and now it was time to take back control. When Emma and Michael arrived at the office, the tension was palpable. The building was quiet, almost eerily so, as if everyone else had sensed the storm that was coming. Emma's mind was racing. What could her contact have found? What piece of information could change everything? She had to know. She had to be ready for whatever was next. The office was small and nondescript, tucked away in a corner of the building. Emma knocked lightly on the door, and it creaked open to reveal a familiar face, a former colleague who had worked with her in the early days of her career. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder before gesturing them in. "Close the door behind you," he whispered urgently. "We need to be quick." Emma and Michael exchanged a glance, the seriousness of the moment not lost on either of them. Emma stepped inside, her heart pounding. "What do you have?" He reached into his drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, handing it to Emma without a word. She opened it quickly, her eyes scanning the documents inside. There, staring back at her, was the key to everything. Gregory's personal bank statements, several transactions, and a string of emails that painted a much darker picture than she had ever imagined. Gregory was laundering money through several offshore accounts, her contact explained, his voice trembling. I've been watching him for months, and I've managed to get access to some of his accounts. This could bring him down, Emma. He's been hiding a lot more than you know. Emma felt the blood rush to her face. She had always known that Gregory was dangerous, but she hadn't expected this. She had suspected that there were things he wasn't telling her, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. Gregory had been using their deal and her vulnerability as a cover for his own criminal activities. She felt a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. Michael leaned over her shoulder, reading the documents with a grim expression. This is big, Emma. If we expose this, it'll take him down. But we have to move fast. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing with the possibilities. She could go public with this, use it to protect herself, and finally put an end to Gregory's threats. But there was still one problem. If she exposed Gregory, it might put her career, her wealth, and everything she had worked for under a microscope. The decision wasn't as simple as it seemed. I need time to think, Emma said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She turned to her contact. Thank you. You've given me something I can use. But this changes everything. I need to decide what's best for me, for my future. Her contact nodded. Take your time, Emma. Just know that you have what you need to destroy him, if you want to. As they left the office, Emma felt a renewed sense of determination. She had the power to take control of the situation, to expose Gregory, and make sure he would never have the chance to hurt her or anyone else again. But the decision weighed heavily on her. How much was she willing to risk to bring him down? Was it worth the consequences, the fallout that might follow? That night, Emma sat down with Michael, the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. They discussed everything, the risks, the rewards, the potential consequences of exposing Gregory's criminal activities. Michael was supportive, but Emma could see the concern in his eyes. He didn't want her to take unnecessary risks, but he also knew that this was the moment where she could either reclaim her future or lose everything. Whatever you decide, Emma, I'm with you, Michael said quietly, taking her hand in his. I just want you to be safe. We've come this far, and we've fought for everything we have. You don't have to do this alone. Emma squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his support. It meant everything to her. For the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. She had spent so much of her life fighting alone, but now she didn't have to. She had Michael, and that made all the difference. In the end, the decision was hers to make. She could expose Gregory and take him down, but it would come with consequences. Or she could find another way to protect herself without risking it all. As the hours passed, Emma knew that she couldn't let Gregory win. She had fought too hard to let him destroy everything now. The next morning, Emma made her decision. She couldn't keep running from her past, from the choices she had made. She would face it head-on, take control, and expose Gregory for who he really was. With the evidence in hand, she called her lawyer and set the wheels in motion. She would use Gregory's criminal activities to her advantage, but she would do it on her terms. As the weeks passed, Emma's life began to shift. The story of Gregory's illegal dealings became public, and the fallout was immediate. Gregory's empire crumbled and he was arrested, his criminal activities exposed for all to see. Emma, however, was able to protect herself. She released her own statement, framing the entire situation as a battle for her future, a fight for independence. She didn't shy away from the truth, but she controlled the narrative. The public reaction was mixed. Some admired her strength, while others were quick to judge. But Emma didn't care. She had reclaimed her life, her future, and her independence. She had fought back against the man who had tried to control her, and she had won. As for Gregory, he disappeared from her life for good. The last remnants of the man who had once held power over her were wiped away, and Emma could finally breathe easy. She had won the battle, but more importantly, she had won back her sense of self. She had faced her fears, fought for what was hers, and emerged victorious. The months that followed were filled with reflection and growth. Emma's relationship with Michael grew stronger, and together they began to build a new life, one free from the shadows of the past. Emma had learned that no matter how hard life got, she had the strength to overcome it. She had faced betrayal, fear, and uncertainty, but in the end, she had become the woman she was always meant to be. With her future now secure, Emma looked ahead with a sense of peace and purpose. She had been through the fire, and now she was ready for whatever came next. No longer defined by her past, Emma was finally free to live her life on her own terms. Let me know if you need any further adjustments or additions to the story.